Hello, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the ADHD Dads. I'm your host, CJ,
I'm JJ.
and today we're going to be talking about my ADHD evaluations, part two, the continuation. I've received an official diagnosis and wanted to update the listeners and any curious parents or people with adult ADHD, what that process looks like and how it's been for our family. And my oldest also started that evaluation process as well. So some updates there and kind of checking in with you guys to let you know how that's going. So, but first off, man, JJ, how you doing, man? That hat's killer.
Had to do it because the bed here, I don't know what I do at night, but apparently it's not sleeping in one position. So that's why the hat's on today. Because I took a shower last night. People, I keep good care of myself. But yeah, I took a shower last night. So the hair was a little bit bonkers today. But I teach every Wednesday at Cohen's school and teach math. And when I got there, I love this kid. It's hilarious. He's walking toward the door right on the playground. Recess is when I usually get there, and he's just walking toward the door, and then I catch up to him. And he had an opportunity today to share the joke of the day for the whole school to hear during announcements. And his mom texts me and she says, "He delivered it so well. It was such a great job. You have to ask him about it." So I go up to him and I say, "Hey, buddy, I hear you have a joke to share." And he goes, "I hurt myself." And he shows me this scraped up hand. And I said, "Oh, no. Man, I'm so sorry, buddy." He's like, "Yeah, it's causing my stomach to have a stomach ache. So I need to come home. I'm sick." So it was a funny way to start. Not the funny that I was looking to hear from him. In fact, he even said he wasn't able to tell me the joke. So I haven't heard that yet. Looking forward to it. Maybe I could share that on a future episode. But yeah, poor kiddo. He wasn't doing well. We stuck it out through math, and then he said, "Hey, see you later. I'm doing fine." So yeah, good day for him, despite the little scrape up.
Until next time, we'll have to hear the punchline, I guess. I was really hoping to hear a joke to kick things off today.
Oh man, me too. I was like so excited, and then he just said nah, and I have to settle with nah for now.
Well, it's I don't want to say a funny story. It's an interesting story, and by the end of it, you'll know why. But when we took our family to Disney World a few years back to Florida to visit my mom, kids were a few years younger, and they hadn't quite figured out humor yet. They're like, I don't know if you have some 4 or 5-year-olds, but their humor isn't quite on point yet. They haven't quite figured out comedic timing or what constitutes a good punchline. So, but she was like hell bent that summer on figuring out a joke, so she was telling like just these really bad jokes that would make no sense, like you couldn't even put the 2 points together. And just at the end of the joke, she would just say, "Waka waka," and that's when you knew that was our cue to laugh. So,
the classic Fozzie.
Yeah. So we're sitting at dinner with my whole family, and after our first day at Disney, and kind of a lull as we're waiting for our food after all this day in the humid, sun, and Naomi goes, "You want to hear a joke?" And everyone perks up, at the table. "Yeah, let's hear it." She goes, why did the daddy chicken cross the road? We all, okay, why? She goes, "To leave his kids on one side and never come back to them." And we all just kind of like eyes open, look at each other like, "What do you do?" And after like 3 seconds of dead silence, she goes, "Waka waka." And we're just like, like trying not to make it awkward. There's probably some really deep psychological thing going on in the adolescent brain of her, trying to figure out divorce from mom and dad, and we're in this new place with this new guy, and it's in the first year of this relationship and all these new things. So it's a humbling moment to witness as a parent, to see how our kids are processing these really intense things that are going on in their lives, and how they can try to make light of it or understand it through, humor or lack thereof. But
Mm.
it was an interesting thing, and she's gotten a lot better at her humor, and those jokes haven't made an appearance in her humor or in her vocalizations as of that. But it was kind of a moment that we were like, oh man, how do you deal with that?
I have. I'll share one other then. I'm a person who's pretty open and can take most any questions, and had a recent experience with a kiddo who was just very curious about my situation, and I told her at this point that yeah, I was divorced, and I do co-parenting with my kiddo's mom, and we do really well. And anyway, she's walking with me, and she looks at me and she said, you're skinny. I bet that's why your wife left you.
Oh God, I
and
know where
here
this is going.
and here I was kind of chuckling. I said, well, no, I'm actually, I'm a skinnier guy, but I'm still muscular and stuff. She says, oh yeah, and show me your muscles. So I flex my I flexed my biceps, and then she said, do you have a six pack? And I chuckled again, and she said, well, I don't know exactly why your wife left you, but you are still skinny. So I just kind of laughed it off. And I love the curiosity of kids. When they're going through experiences and they try and figure things out, the best thing we can do is, at least listen to them. Like I'd hate to put a cap on that and say, or put a tape over her mouth and suggest, hey, we don't say those things, but rather gently, maybe in the certain context, a certain situation. Yeah, we can save those questions for maybe another time, but just allowing them to explore that side of themselves and have open and honest conversations in a safe space, I think is something that is of incredible value to them, because something in there means something more deep than maybe that surface level that they're giving us. So yeah, I really appreciate what you said, because that's like office level type humor of awkward. Like, what do we do here? Do we laugh? Oh my God. I don't know how to respond. And when we get those questions asked directly of us, do we clam up and just kind of like redirect, or do we try and talk with them at their level, and not in a condescending way, but really just a respectful, caring way? And I think I did pretty well. And my kiddo doesn't ask the questions in that way, but he gets to those moments sometimes, and I really appreciate the fact that he's thinking about those things and he's willing to speak about it.
Well, I appreciate you being so coy, because for the listeners, JJ was talking about our oldest, who's 8. So she has no filter. She'll ask any question. She'll go right up to you. She's brash. She's honest. She's direct. And
And
JJ
what's
didn't mention the questions. She really poked out about where does Cohen's ADHD come from? Does she get it from you? Like.
Yeah, she did. But here's the beautiful thing about all that is, like, I could feel maybe a little bit of level of embarrassment, and, feel a little bit of, I guess, self-esteem issues in that. But I'm fairly comfortable in my space. And then again, like I just find so much brilliance and depth in a kid who can ask those questions and be honest and really like go through life and try and dissect what these things mean. So it was actually an honor to have those things asked of me, especially, like I said, she can come to somebody who's not going to be like, stop it. Don't ask those questions. That's not appropriate.
Sorry,
So,
my
oh well.
dog's throwing bones over here. We'll edit that out.
My dog's scratching at the window here. I don't know why.
Oh man, and my ADHD brain had a point I wanted to wrap up with what you just said too, and of course, there it goes.
Yeah, our thoughts will take us in many different directions, and when those certain thoughts are explored, sometimes that really that creates in us, I think what am I trying to say? The reinforcement of exploring our emotional and just natural intelligence that we have. So it's something I would encourage parents of kiddos with ADHD. Yeah, there's maybe a time and a place for certain questions, certain topics, but to allow that to blossom and give that kid an opportunity to really not shut their brain off, but explore it more.
No, I found my thought, buddy. You brought me back to it. That's why we do this together and not alone, because we finish each other's thoughts. But I was going to say, coming in as a step parent with no preparatory period to prepare myself for what it's like being around kids, I would say that was some of the most awkward and stressful things of my ego to get over, is like, when the kids would come up and ask some really intense, deep questions that they haven't really articulated or figured out in their own brain, but there it comes flying out. I've mentioned on the show before, and my first date meeting the kids, little Aubrey says, are you going to be my new daddy? And that could, if, for less mature minds, that could really like whirlwind somebody that's not prepared for that. But one of the most beautiful experiences that I've found since I've been hanging out with these kids is that disarming me to that openness and curiosity. And instead of just like seizing up and feeling anxiety or awkward because I don't know how to handle it, or I don't know how to answer in a way that they can understand, or in a way that is maybe politically or culturally or intellectually acceptable for them at this age, right? But that practice of that muscle and communication and the openness to ask questions with them has really been life changing, I think, to my perception of the world and how I communicate. And I live my life in such a more curious way now. And here we are, we're spouting off on this curiosity. And we had just talked today off a microphone that we wanted to do an episode of Curiosity. So I guess I'm gearing up for it, man.
Yeah, buddy. And then to kind of hark back to what we talked about before is taking extreme ownership. If you have been leading a life of, attempting to constantly aim toward integrity and, owning up to your past mistakes, when a question is thrown at you, yeah, you can bring up, some of the poor choices you made, but you're doing it in a context of safety at that point. So, an example with Cohen is he's asked in the presence of his mom and his dad, me and his mom, why can't we just get a place all of us together? And we can talk to him about some of the reasons why that doesn't quite make sense for us as adults. And if he asks further, there are some things that we did that we don't need to get specific about, but being able to say to Cohen, like, hey man, I made some serious mistakes and I hurt your mom and it wasn't okay. That was something between the two of us that we struggled with. And I take full responsibility for that. Like, being vulnerable and open and honest because we take ownership, and then allowing our kids to process that with us without having to make up some sort of story for them to protect them somehow. I think that's the most powerful gift we can give them when we're in a difficult situation, something that's hard on them because they didn't cause this, and now here they are in the situation. Like, man, I would, as a child, I would prefer to have a better understanding than somebody saying, oh, well, we don't really talk about that.
Yeah, and I still find myself navigating those difficult conversations on a daily basis, JJ. We the girls went over to their dad's a few weeks ago, and he was dating a girl that it didn't work out, and the girls were coming home talking about that, and I just was kind of checking in with them to see how that made them feel, and I said, how does that make you feel? And she said, it's fine, and then I kind of went, oh gosh, is it really though? Like, I mean, I feel like that would even for, as brief as maybe my mom was dating a lot of the guys that came in and out of my life, it still had an impact. And I still remember those men for however brief time that they were there, a lot of those guys, so I was, just kind of curious and where her mind was really at. And she really was having a little bit of a difficulty expressing that. And I, geared it towards me. And I said, if there's ever anything going on with me that you don't like in this family dynamic, I want you guys to feel safe enough. I don't want you to worry about hurting Coley's feelings or that it's going to affect our relationship. I'm an adult and I can handle it. And I just want you to know that if there's any issue with anything that I do or the way that I parent you, I want you to come to me. And I said, do you feel like that? Is there any problems that you have? And Naomi said, no, but I don't want you to marry mama, and I said, well, why is that? And she said, well, I just, because then if you're married to her, you're going to be kissing her and hugging her so much more, and then I won't be getting the attention,
Mm.
and and I don't want you to have a baby with mama, I just want mama and daddy to have babies, so, and I had to, instead of like dagger in the ego heart, and eat who, Naomi, eat who, I have to, you step back from that and realize the complex emotions that go on in the head of a 7-year-old, and that I remember feeling at that age, and still can feel from time to time with my own step dad and my own stepmom, and just the whole dynamics of divorced parents dating and remarrying, and all of that comes with it. So I still have those complex conversations with her every day, and we really need to go back and try another Ask Dad episode, because we had this original idea, guys, in our development of this podcast, where JJ and I wanted to bring the kids on and have them ask us just open forum questions, whatever they could come to mind, anything from is Santa Claus real to, why don't you and mama love each other anymore? And we were going to navigate that on camera and kind of give it to you guys as a little fun intermittent episode, but it did not happen as smoothly as we had hoped with ADHD kids and ADHD dads. We were all over the place. Everyone was talking over each other. You couldn't get a clean sound bit out of that episode. Cohen was obsessed with his dinosaurs. He was giving us dinosaur trivia. He didn't want to have anything, other than the dinosaurs in the conversation. So he just directed it that way. So, we should maybe try that maybe one-on-one
We
with the
will.
kids, and
What we're going to
see what
do
happens.
is, yeah, we're going to reevaluate the situation and come up with a plan, and we're going to deliver some great content with the kids' participation. So, yeah,
But
evaluating
now,
it and getting it nailed down, we'll get it figured out. Yes, sir. What are you going to say?
yeah. Well, we've just gone on this 16 and 56-second tangent here. We were supposed to be talking about ADHD. Instead, ADHD talked about us, So,
That's why I use that word reevaluate, so we can get back to evaluations.
So yeah, we were just talking about that story of Naomi at the theme park with you, bombarding you with questions and digging into the most personal parts of your life. And, you guys left that next day, and we started our ADHD evaluation journey. And we had about 2 visits with our 8-year-old, and those were about 4 hours each. And by the end of those 4 hours, she did not want to talk about it. She didn't want to tell me what she did. She didn't want to go over it again. She didn't want to rehash it. It was much like being at school for that period, and she just did not want to go over the curriculum when she got home. So I gave her a little bit of space to process that. And, a month before that, I got my official diagnosis with generalized anxiety and ADHD. So, that was interesting to talk about that with the evaluator there. It was like reading my horoscope, but everything that's wrong with my brain. It pretty much sounded, she was just kind of nailing me to a T, and all the things that we were talking about, and all the challenges that I may face. So, but it was kind of empowering as well, to go 36 years of my life kind of wondering what's going on, and kind of having the mindset of like, that's not a thing. I don't need medication, or, I don't even know where to begin on behavioral therapy. So what's the point? I'm already 36, old, can't teach an old dog new tricks, kind of mindset. But I've been on this journey ever since we started talking about having our 8-year-old evaluated, and I've just been digesting books, man, and reading everything that I can, and really trying to catch up to speed here. And the more that I've done that, the more that I've thought, oh man, wow, just understanding this better has really been helping me. So it's been empowering, man. The medication I've been on, I started 30 milligrams of Vyvanse, and that's a slow release tablet, so that lasts me like 12 hours. And I haven't really felt any negative side effects. I don't feel twitchy or that I can't sleep or anything like that, which are some of the common things that are associated with that medication. I have noticed a increase of my focus and productivity, and the moments where I really need to buckle down in front of the computer and get stuff done. I feel it has helped me, and I don't. It kind of makes me wonder, like, what was the stigma that I had all these years of, like, not wanting to rely on this, and it was just such this egocentric thing of wanting full control over my mind. And but now I'm kind of realizing that I wasn't really operating in a full capacity of my mind for a lot of my life, or there were some pathways or some roads that were under construction or had detours, and it made getting the processing and the regulation of emotions and the transitions from project or thing to thing or emotion to emotion and the structure of it all feel really overwhelming and really impossible. Um, so yeah, I'm pretty happy with the process. I've got some funny stories to tell about the evaluation process. As last time, it was always funny, having to be timed and fit little keys into little keyholes that were different angles, and having to do that with my left hand, and being timed, and having to recall all of this stuff. So it was interesting, man.
You just made me think of that common response to people who really dislike math. When am I ever going to use this? Did you have that thought when you were doing the keys? You're like, when am I ever going to, in real life, be going through this? What is it?
Buddy, no, because as many times as it takes me to get my key into an ignition or into a lock, no, I was like, is this why I do that? Because I can't slow down to just shove the thing in the right way.
then the next thought would be, well, technology is going to replace all that stuff with just sensors. We're just going to be blinking and our door will unlock. So what's the point in this right now? It's going to take care of all it. I do really have a lot of curious thoughts and questions about the process, because I haven't been through it. And I guess one of my first questions that came to mind is, you said empowering, which is, I don't, in some ways makes me feel relief, makes me feel inspired, encouraged. And that's my initial response. I'm sure there are a lot of people out there, maybe some who are listening now, who are intimidated, and especially in not having gone through any sort of evaluations when they're young, suggesting to themselves that I just want to kind of get a handle on things. I have all these thoughts trying to take over at the same time in my head. Do I just want to go it the way I've been going at it for so long, or should I get evaluated? Evaluation might be something that's too scary for me. With the words that you use now, I sense some sort of like, on the other side of the evaluation, some relief and, like you said, empowerment. What could you possibly tell somebody who's still feeling that intimidation, still feeling a little scared, maybe even worried that it's going to tell them something they don't want to hear? What could you tell them that maybe would help them take that step?
Just help yourself. We get so caught up in our fears, and there's nothing to be afraid of helping yourself. I think it's one of the bravest things that we can do. It's scary for sure to find out new things about you, especially to find out new things about you that you are have now realized that have been holding you back, or that have affected your life in some ways. And not to place all my blame on ADHD. I take a lot of responsibility for a lot of the decisions I made, but I think, again, just an earlier understanding of this and the behavioral techniques on how to cope with it because this is a lifelong thing. It's not just something that we get over. It is something that we can learn to cope with. And I think that the earlier that we give those tools to ourselves, the better we are at succeeding, and the further that we can go. And so anyone that's hesitant, that's that's scared of going into this process, there's nothing to be scared of, if you come out the other end and you're better for it.
Yeah, fear is an interesting thing, right? Sometimes it prevents us from, like you said, helping ourselves. We place fear on the future because we have like some sort of pessimistic act of faith over it, suggesting to ourselves that if I do this, something bad will come of it. Of course, the evaluations process for you and for anybody out there who's considering it's an attempt to help yourself and to recognize your gifts and where you can hone that ability within, I suppose, right?
I feel like it was a lot scarier before, not knowing what was going on. I specifically remember, when I went back to college. I graduated high school and moved out to California and did stand-up comedy for a few years, and I didn't go back to college until I was 23. Excuse me. And I had a real drive to want to be there, to want to learn, to succeed and do well. Um, but I found that it was very difficult to organize the information and process that in a way that was retained, and that I could critically think about. And that was a really eye-opening moment for me in college of like, what is going on here? Why can't I remember this? Why can't I keep it in my head? And I just kind of pushed that down, because I remember back, even further back to high school, and when I maybe started struggling with some grades, and I my parents would come down on me, and I would say, I'm trying, I'm doing my best, I just can't, I'm stupid, something's wrong with me, and my dad would, in his way of trying to build me up, like, there's nothing wrong with you, you just got to work harder, you just got to focus, and you just got to do it. And that just didn't resonate with me. I'm trying, I'm trying to focus, I'm trying to do better, and it just wouldn't stick. And so when that surfaced for me in college and I was feeling a lot of that, it was just like, push that down. It's and nothing's wrong, you just got to focus harder, you got to read more, read it again, do, and come up with these different methods, which, as towards the end of my college career, I started getting the hang of it with note cards and voice memos and presentations that I would create for myself to help me organize that information. And my dad wasn't wrong in saying you need to do more, you need to work harder, but I really wish that we would have had some behavioral tools and tactics to kind of talk about and strategize what that looked like and help to organize it all, because I really wanted to. I just was such at a loss, and so lost in my emotions, because homework felt so overwhelming, and all of this executive function and critical thinking and process that needs to happen, that's wrapped up in these emotions, because I can't retain it, I can't read it right, I can't analyze it right, was just like this boiling pot waiting to happen, and a pubescent teen nonetheless. you know so it's different now that I feel that, again, I know what's going on, and then I know that it's not just like, well, I'm just genetically defected, it's just my body and my brain is just broken now. I can see, well, look, if there's structure around this, and if you find the right neural pathways to travel down, it's a pretty cool road, man. And you got some really great scenery, and you can learn some great things along the way. But there's no shortcut for me and most people. Sometimes I have to take a roundabout way to organize the information, or to think about it. And as I've gotten older, like I said, I've learned those techniques, and it's become easier.
Man, I have so many thoughts and questions and just like praises for this whole talk. One of the thoughts I had is we mentioned the movie The Disruptors in
Yes.
an earlier episode, and what I just loved what they did in that film is they highlighted some of the brilliant minds that most people in this culture are have heard of or aware of. To highlight the fact that when you have something like this, it's not a defect. In many ways, it's an opportunity,
Yeah.
something that you when you explore and you get to understand, you can be a master at your craft. And that's something that I love to highlight because again, like my son, I could bring all these drawings over here. I'll do that maybe some other time. Like he is just really when he wants to draw and he really loves to draw, he focuses and he just puts out something brilliant. I was on a call with some guys last week and I asked him to just, give him, give me some time. And here you can use this paper over here, this long sheet of paper to draw on. And 5 minutes later, he's like, check out what I did. And I was blown away. Like the amount of talent in any individual can just be used for their best, the greatest good in their lives. And so I just want to highlight that. And then I had a question to kind of follow up with that because you mentioned, working harder. Well, I think that's a really hard thing to define. What does working harder look like? I think it can vary because you got your evaluation and then you started on this medication, and then of course in college, at some point along the way, you recognized there's a certain uh, I guess, recipe for your finding a success in this area and that area. Maybe the way to success in this subject looks different than the way to the success in this subject because of your level of interest and your ability to focus. So what would you say now through the process of going through evaluation, adding medication to the mix? In your experience, what's that kind of cocktail of ideal tools look like?
Well, I think the medication has helped me, create some of those shortcuts through my processy, and the way that I retain the information and organize it, I can do more smoothly with the medication. There's less noise going on in between my ears, which, that's an overwhelming thing too of ADHD is just the constant chatter between the ears of analyzing everything, analyzing the emotions, trying to figure out how to operate in this environment. It's a lot of chatter. And the medication has really, really helped quiet that down. And I have noticed, an increase in focus. I've been working on this kids book and just bang that out today, and I've just been able to, where before without the medication I had my tactics, but there was just this one piece that I couldn't get away from, and it was this like need to stand up every 15 minutes. I can only like be zoned in for 15 minutes, and then it's like the brain chatter just becomes too much. The ideas are bouncing around, and I just need to like pace around the office or the house and just think the thoughts, without typing, without writing, without doing the thing or making the email. Or I just need to like let it run its course until it's done it at its speed that it needs to do, and then it's slowed down and quiet down a little bit, and then I can make my way back over to the project area and sit down and get another 15 minutes out before that whole process starts over again. And I've noticed that I can just sit with myself more. I can just sit down and I don't feel the need to constantly be pacing like that, which has been a huge help in a productivity of an adult trying to get stuff done, right?
Fascinating, man, and that just makes me think of so much in the terms of development and the years of life and how it might look different from childhood to today. Um, Bear with me. Hopefully this makes sense. And by the way, I'm speaking to the situation based on experience, not based on my medical understanding because I'm not a doctor. But when I was in elementary school and we got Nintendo, I could play that thing for hours.
Yeah.
And that was like an area where I was just zoned in, I could focus and I enjoyed the hell out of it.
Yeah.
Now If I play a video game, I've got 15 minutes max on that. I'm like, I got to move on to the next thing. My kiddo, who's ADHD, will be bouncing off the walls like you'd expect any kiddo to be, but he also does have hyper focus when it comes to playing video games. Um, so I guess what I'm saying in that, and what I understand is that the importance of re visiting the idea of evaluation over time could make a lot of sense in our developmental track. I imagine once we reach adulthood, there would be more of a behavioral approach after you've received diagnosis and you're working through medications and stuff. Do you have a thought on that now, having your oldest go through evaluation and you having kind of completed that first major round and having a prescribed medication?
Yeah, I don't know if I have a thought on it, but I have an observation for sure. Because we're talking about how I'm sitting here feeling empowered, and just like, yeah, I can conquer the world now. I know what's going on, and I can know like what rabbit holes down and what questions to ask now. And there's this medication that helps a little bit, and I feel empowered. Let's do it. Where my 8-year old is not having that experience. She's having a little bit of embarrassment and shame around the diagnosis, and she doesn't want to do the evaluations, which is, I'm pretty sure common. No 8-year old wants to sit in the office for 4 hours and do this stuff. But, she's having a hard time accepting that what ADHD means and what it means for her and how it affects her life in these ways. It's really tough to point out or make her aware of some of the emotional things that we see her going through and how that may be attributed to what's going on here in a neurodiverse way. And she just doesn't want to be different. She doesn't want to stand out. And I tried connecting with her about, my brain works this way too, and this is our special brains, and we can do a lot with them. And she's kind of been teetering talk back and forth with that. Some days she's proud that we both have these brains and they work this way, and some days, being the stepdad, she doesn't want to have anything to do with me or my ideas or my cultural things, no matter if I could be, Robin Hood and the savior of all. And she just gets in those moods as a divorced kid, and I understand that. So it goes back and forth with her. But some of the areas that I have found success in is connecting with her on where I think that my special brain helps me, and with the drawing and the art and the writing. And we are always working on that kind of stuff together. Drawing was one of the first things that we did together and connected about. She still asks to draw with me all the time out of the blue. She wants to help me with this kid's book, and I'm gonna let her, and it's just a thing that we can connect with. And through that process, I've been able to say, like, okay, but why you're good at art, and why you're so creative, and why you're good at telling stories, and why you like telling stories, and that's because you have this special brain. And that has really seemed to give a little bit of empowerment to her. But she didn't go through the journey that I did into adulthood and blew up a few relationships because she didn't know how her brain was working, or failed a few classes, or missed a few really important auditions or interviews or appointments, or because of this thing. And my hope is that I can reach through to her in this process to understand that the things that we're talking about and that we're doing are beneficial and will help her succeed so much further in life. You think it's hard convincing an adult parent to go get evaluated in their 30s or 40s. Try convincing an 8-year-old that this is good stuff. Sometimes we as adults connect just like our kids with our fears and our insecurities, and that fear of the unknown with this whole evaluation process. So
Man, I mean that sparked a bunch of different emotional reactions in me. I mean, for one, I'm just an empathetic person, and hearing her kind of feel that shame, and you talking about the shame that you experienced with the challenge of not fully understanding it and it, building up the story in your head about something wrong with me or I'm not good enough. That's hard to hear because again in that movie, The Disruptors, I just loved toward the very beginning of it. One of the celebrities basically said, well, if people don't like you, screw them. Who cares? You're somebody special for real. That needs to be celebrated. And I really appreciate that message because, man, one thing that's so hard to navigate, and we have a guest that we talked about something similar. Bullying can be really hard on kids, and a lot of kids tend to point out and push against something that they don't understand, and sometimes that looks like making fun of it or trying to stay away from it. And I've witnessed that in my son, his experience here and there. Um, his mom and I, we lift him up. We tell him how wonderful he is. We've told him, he has ADHD and he's grasping some of it. He doesn't get all of it, but that's okay. It's not something that he needs to figure out right now. Yet at the same time, I had to kind of intervene in a couple of things the other night, and he basically said at the end of that, it's like, I just make all mistakes. Everything's wrong because of me. And man, I try so hard to not ever allow that type of message into his brain. But he goes to school. He goes to school and acts certain ways, and kids are like, I don't understand this. One kid even said something that I don't want to repeat here because my heart just like was ripped apart when I heard it. And he took it to heart and he cried in his bed one night repeating those words and basically not wanting to exist because of it. It's devastating. On the flip side, he's also been given enough of an understanding of himself to embrace some of those things. So when we were on that vacation with you guys and he was, expressing himself, he was free. He was completely free because I didn't take the medication with us. I said, you know what? No need for the medication. We're just going to have a blast. We're going to go
He
in
was
all
a
these different directions.
velociraptor, JJ.
Yeah, buddy.
He was Blue the dinosaur. He was roaming around Jurassic World as a uncaged reptile.
He was curling up his hands, like the dinos do, so they're ready to just slash and stuff. Yeah, and he didn't care. These people, they'd walk around, they'd have to dodge him because he didn't even know they existed. I remember doing that when I was young. I was like, I can go through crowds with no problem. People were probably like, get out of my way, kid. I didn't see it that way. I saw me just being this amazing, better than Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible going through a series of lasers. I was just mastering it when I was a kiddo, but I probably was annoying a few people in the crowd. Who cares? Screw them, right? I'm living my space. I'm happy. But yeah, back to that, the vacation, he was acting, himself, and he was making noises and stuff. And Aubrey had said something to him like, could you stop? And I don't know to the extent of that situation, but what was interesting is he and I, we were sitting down about a week after that trip, and we were playing Ticket to Ride board game that he really enjoys. And I started humming a song that we both had heard earlier, and he goes, "Can you stop?" Like, can you stop? He was like annoyed and just outright said it. And I said, "Oh yeah, I'm sorry, buddy. I know that sometimes you do that too, where you hum or you make sounds based on something you've heard. It's kind of like what I'm doing." And he said, "Well, it's different for me." And I was like, at that moment, buddy, I got my phone out. I got the video on. I'm like, I'm going to capture this because this could be remarkable. And it was. He said to me, he said, well, I asked him, what do you mean? And he says, sometimes I do that so I can focus. I make those sounds so I can focus. And,
Wow.
when Aubrey told me to stop, I said, well, I was just trying to focus in those moments. And I thought, God dang it, man. I gave my son all this space, all this time, and continued to just like pour love onto him, not, in a way that was, overdoing it and spoiling him with falsities. I've just been honest with him and saying, you are a gifted individual and I see that in you. And then because of these conversations he has with his mom and with his teachers and with me and some of his friends and stuff, he was able to speak to some of the situation that he understands in a way that was incredibly intelligent, self-aware, and honestly, I think sets himself up for continued success. Yeah, it might bother some people who don't really understand the situation, but I'm okay with that because he's finding himself through that. He's finding his strengths. And just kind of focus on the funny part about the situation with the kids. I've joked a couple of times now, like on that vacation, it was at times it was like multi-ball, constantly multi-ball. Where you're hitting the flippers constantly and the balls are flying all over the place. I loved that. It was great to let the kids just kind of be set free to enjoy themselves. It was chaos, but it was also a beautiful thing to witness. So I guess my message back to all this, is when you go to the evaluation process, you're going, in my opinion, you're going to find your greatest self and hone that. And it might be medication, kind of brings you into a moment of focus too, but that's not pulling against you. That's not pulling away from who you are. I think that in some ways helps you to kind of continue to walk this path and highlight the great gifts that you have within.
Oh, what a beautiful moment with Cohen, because I think that he just hit a milestone there of what we're talking about in these important moments of figuring out what strategies that we need to operate and succeed. And I don't think he's going to know to get out the note cards yet or make a PowerPoint presentation, but I think that's a really good first step, that he's found the calming thing that helps him focus and helps him get his head around that, and an awareness to express that to you. And kudos to you for creating an environment where he can do that, and in his own space, in his own way, in his own time, because that's not easy, I think, for a lot of parents, but especially parents with neurodiverse kids. We're dealing with high emotions all the time, and you never know when the floor could drop out with you with a meltdown. And navigating that can be tricky at times. And, I think that a lot of kids that have ADHD grow up with this shame that we're talking about here and that we kind of see expressing itself. And I don't know that it's necessarily all from a shame of I have this condition and it has a name and that means something's wrong with me. I think a lot of the shame comes from in the way that we parent them, and the way that we reprimand them, and the tone of voice that we use, and the volume, and the consequences that we lay down. Because though their brain is just being wild and unmanageable to us as parents, they're just trying to navigate a moment to moment interaction in their lives, and figure out the complexities of that. So when you come down yelling and screaming and telling them not to feel it or to go away or to calm down, that puts a heavy burden of shame on a lot of kids that are neurodivergent. So I think it's really the responsibility of us as parents with neurodiverse kids to really have the patience and grace, and the loss of ego, the letting go of the ego, to help our kids navigate what probably feels pretty scary and surreal to them.
Yeah, and I mean the reason why I said what I said just now is because of the great example that you shared with having chats with your oldest. She might sometimes push back against it and still go into those spaces of fear and doubt and shame. But when you are consistently showing up and giving our kids the space to speak to that, they're going to find comfort in that. It's gonna go a long way. It might not be today, it might not be tomorrow. We might have a period in the teen years where it's it's a little quiet in that conversation space for a time, but the more we show up for them every time, the higher chance of success they're going to have in the future. um, and one thing about this evaluations thing, I want to kind of push toward parents. Kids can be challenging, and kids with neurodivergence can be challenging in the moment. It's not because they want to make life difficult. So when we go to the evaluations process, I want us to go in with love for our children. I don't want us to go in saying, I need something to fix my kid because it's driving me crazy. Let's go in with love. Let's go in with this hope and this confidence that this just like any other person you could run into, has a gift, and we just need to tap into that gift. And if it does mean changing a little bit of how they approach life because of medication, that's okay. You're not sentencing them to anything. You're giving them this power. You're empowering them to really take charge of themselves, and then giving them that space to continue to have the conversation is also of such great value here, which, you talked about that a little bit ago too, is that, working through the tools and managing things to understand yourself, that's giving you another sense of empowerment, which gives you confidence. It builds you up. That is the two-prong approach here that I think is of utmost importance. It's not just medicating some sort of issue. It's medicating to help the gifts come out, to build up this person who is going to give themselves and the world a lot.
Yeah, it's like cold medicine, man. Cold medicine ain't gonna fix your cold, but it'll help. It'll help you get through the day a little bit. Now, I'm not saying you should just go drink bottles of NyQuil all the time just to stay healthy. But I think responsibly and with the right information and the right support of people around you, to help you ask the right questions and different questions and other questions, is vitally important through this process. The support group, and the people around you, and us being the support group to our kids in this scenario, is just vitally important. I'm very thankful for my wife, and my journey through this, and her patience with me. And she's been very great about giving me some biofeedback too, of things that she's noticed with the medication or not, or days that I haven't taken it. And through that, I think it's just one small piece of the puzzle, that I can, make a beautiful picture out of, with the right tools. So I'm excited to kind of go down this journey and see what I need to kind of, some strategies and some methods. But I feel like I'm already in a really good place, doing this podcast with you and the guests that we have on, and that we're lucky enough to pick their brains and get their expertise advice about, has been so fulfilling and inspiring in my life, and helped me grow in so many ways. And the dad groups that we're a part of, and the podcast that we listen to, and the calls that we're on, with the men that we coach, has been life changing, and really helped along this process too, with the emotional and regulation aspect of things.
Wonderfully said. Yeah. If you ever, anybody out there listening, and I would say this to myself, I have said this to myself, is, when things are hard, it doesn't mean that we are incapable. It just means that we are identifying something that we could work on. Not necessarily fix, but understand. A growth mindset is a huge gift. Everybody can tap into that and make something great of themselves. Not because they haven't been great, but because they want to find something even greater. And I want to always kind of point out that therapy is a beautiful thing. It's not in any way an indication like, hey, I can't do this alone. I actually have the gifts, but I just need to understand them more. One thing I love about therapy is that we generally are the ones talking throughout most of a therapy session. So our doctor, our therapist asks some great questions, and then we kind of work it out on our own. So I guess what I'm saying with that is these gifts that we have, when you explore those with people around you, you find out that the greatness within is just highlighted. And yeah, man, your wife is a beautiful soul that you have in front of you. And I've got a kiddo who makes me a better person every day. It's something that I'd hate to do alone. And I wasn't suggesting that anybody go it alone when I said that comment earlier. I was just saying that the beautiful thing is every individual is special, and it's always highlighted in the people around you.
Well, you just said something really beautiful that I want to circle back to as we wrap things up here. And you said, the aim should be to understand, not to fix. And, that I think that's really applicable to your question earlier of what would I tell somebody that's a little hesitant in going down the evaluation process themselves as an adult. And that's also something that I would tell a parent with a neurodiverse child is, aim to understand, not to fix. There's nothing going on in your brain or your kid's brain that needs to be fixed, but you can really do them a service and yourself a service by aiming to understand that. So thank you for saying that, JJ. That was beautifully put. Well, good sir of you with that fine looking hat, that Puma hat. I feel like you're going to go hang out with Samuel L. Jackson later with that thing.
Oh man, he put my golf game to shame for sure, but I'll take it.
But yeah, thanks, man, for taking time out of your day today. If you are, our listeners, if you're looking to get some evaluations done, I will put some websites up there. I'm sure that it may change locally to you, but I will throw some good websites in the show notes, if I could only talk, that can point you into some directions of getting you some information to get started. So thank you guys for listening and coming along this journey with us. My name is CJ.
I'm JJ.
And until next time, like, comment, share, subscribe, give us that support, give us your ears, and ask some questions, man. We love interacting with you guys and finding more about you, our listeners, and what kind of struggles and journey you've got ahead of you. So thank you guys for listening, and we'll talk to you soon. Talk at you soon.
See you guys.